were very much hiring in early April, and they were in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. I think it was Little Burgundy, sorry. And they've been hiring like crazy, trying to get onto the e-commerce platform. See many of that, and see many opportunities for e-commerce, cyber security, or digital marketing, and many so on for that. Industries and their business models are going to be changing. So I think COVID, which was a great understanding for everyone who's on the, in this conversation, is the industry. COVID literally drew a line to say, hey, these industries are the future, these ones are not. These business models are the future, these are not. So when you're looking, and if you were looking at a company to work at, and they're the ones, falling down right now, these are something where you might want to change how you look at these companies and look at other companies who are reacting better in the future. So just something that we want to talk about probably on the panel more. The other thing is marketing and distribution channels. Many, while omni-channel industry 4.0 was prevalent before, many companies still did not invest, and they are getting affected now. And this is something that we have to look for, especially since industry workers have to be without 6 feet from each other. It's going to be a great opportunity for people who have industry 4.0 and all the data points to make sure they can calibrate quicker than the ones who did not. Looking at brand equity, this is something that's very important. However companies treated people and treated and other companies and treated everyone during this time will be remembered for a generation. And I think there's going to be a big question that when you get to future interviews, a quick question people are going to ask now is, what did you do during COVID-19? And you want to have a story that shows how you help people and not just sat on the couch and probably ate Doritos. Going into the next one, we have experience and disruption. So businesses are adapting to operating and serving customers remotely with a high consciousness of health and quality and transparency, which is true, and let's get into it. So health, safety, and reliability is on everyone's focus right now. Again, you can't be within 6 feet from everyone when you work. You have to make sure everyone is able, for mental health. However, people focusing on their jobs. There's now new content coming out that even too many Zoom calls is affecting people's mental health. These are all things that people have to focus on and, gather back the consumer trust. How can you help is a question that you might want to ask yourself when you're looking for jobs. So looking at travel and hospitality, entertainment, and education, these are all environments that you need help right now adapting to the new changes. Something else that we want to talk about is online quality standards. Amazon and Google has changed the game. We don't wait for delivery anymore because of Amazon's Prime. We look at content way differently than we used to. I have an example there, but late night shows coming on, trying to adapt to the YouTube channels. We saw YouTubers who were 14 years old had better presence and better, better content being delivered than late night shows from CBS and Fox, which is something that is changing the game and we have to look at. The next one is authenticity, transparency, and empathy. It's similar to what we were talking about before. And I would give the example of Airbnb CEO. So if anyone didn't hear about it on the news, Airbnb CEO just had to let go of just over 20% of his staff. And you think, well, how is this a good thing? Airbnb CEO stood up, did a presentation, let everyone know what was happening, and was very direct. And not only that, they let everyone vest their investments so they can take out and have cash flow. They made a website for everyone in the company who lost their job and gave the value propositions to help sell themselves to other companies, and pretty much invited other companies to come recruit everyone that was laid off. This was nearly unheard of, and everyone has been talking about this on Twitter, online, and everything, and he's getting kudos as the CEO of COVID-19. So you should check that out. But I would also ask you, if he did that, how can we learn from that, and how can we go through that in the future? The next one is reshaping organizations and processes. So if you're an industrial engineer or mechanical engineer, you guys are very process focused. Even if you're in business, accounting is very process focused. Processes are completely out of whack right now. Going from, going to speak to, example, hey, I have to go speak to Steph, and I go to her and I grab a piece of paper from her desk. You can't do that anymore. How does everything go digital? How does everything go from using, tools that are online? Is going to be changing everything in the process. So processes and how reshaping how organizations, people used to sit next to other people in finance, this doesn't matter anymore. So these are all going to be changing things. So for planning, process management, these are great skills for you to learn and think about how you can utilize and see opportunities. The next one is talent disruption. I think this is why we're all here. We're all here today is new graduates need to adapt to the changes and demands of the market. They need to reskill, they need to upskill and collaborate remotely and target the winners. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about is an employer market. Before the case, this was an employee market, and we used to be headhunted online 24/7 on LinkedIn. Like I remember the days we had to beat them off with sticks. However, now no one's doing that anymore. We, as an employee, you have to go to the employer and get that attention. That is completely different than what it was for the last 5 years. Now, I don't want to say that it's like 2008 or 1989 or 1929 or 1917. It's not those situations, because it's completely different because we have new technology. So it is easier to reach out, but it's not going to be the same traditional ways that we're going to be doing it. And I think this is a great opportunity to talk about with Steph on the panel later. Targeting the winners of COVID, I think we touched on this a bit already. There was a line in the sand that we have to look at. So we have to look at the industries, and you have to look for the companies who are going to be good in the future. And you have to make sure that you position yourself on how can you incorporate yourself into these new industries. Next one is the hiring process, and onboarding is now digital. This is actually hard for some businesses and for young professionals trying to get employment as well. Before we were used to the phone, which is great. We have practice on being on the phone, so it wasn't so bad. But it's hard to do a presentation on Zoom. It's hard to do, articulate how you're going to help the company on Zoom without seeing your desk, without seeing your coworkers, without touching the actual building, without being in that room, seeing people's body reaction. It's going to be very different, and it's going to be something that a lot of people have to work on. And I think this is going to be something Abdal is going to talk for the future reference on future opportunities that we do for presentations. The next one is diversify of your skill set. You can no longer be one thing anymore. We already saw that in the past, and it's one of the reasons why we created +5 XP. However, right now, it's even worse. You cannot just be an accountant. You can't just be someone in finance. You can't just be a mechanical engineer. You can't just be industrial engineer. You can't just be a pharmacist. You can't just be one thing anymore. You have to have different skills that encompass yourself to give you better value propositions when things change without us expecting it. So it helps. I'm going to give examples of digital skill sets that we can do, but there's many more different ones. So these are not just an example, but SQL, which we normally call SQL in the data world, Python, Microsoft Power BI, which is how you visualize data, project management, Agile and Waterfall, and how you can mix between both. These, if you're going to be an analyst, which is normally all of us coming out of school from the business or engineering faculty, you're an analyst of some kind. These are skills that you're going to be needing. However, Winston and I just spoke to someone in art, and she was saying, how does artificial intelligence affect art? And we were telling her how there was an AI that actually created a art piece that sold for $400,000, and it is changing because art is forms of data, and they are playing with it. And even in music, there was a company that tried to make all the different versions of music so they can protect people from copyright. So there's a lot of new ways how digital skill sets are changing regular frameworks, and there's something that we need to talk about. So I thank you everyone for paying attention. I hope this was valuable to everyone. And now we're going to get started with the panel. So everyone, let's get into it. Guys, you want to introduce yourselves quickly first? Let's go with Steph.
Hey guys, so like I was introduced, I worked for Cirque du Soleil. I'm working for Good Food now, so we are hiring, by the way. You can add me on LinkedIn if you want, but I'm going to talk more about the talent disruption and how our practices have changed. Obviously, if you have questions about what does it mean when it's an employer's market, more than happy to help you, and we're seeing some differences between Montreal and Toronto. Good Food's recruiting in both areas right now, so I can talk to that and give you a bit of advice market-based as well.
So Dave, you want to go next?
Sure thing. Good evening, everyone, or whatever time of day it is in your area of the world. I'm the diversity and inclusion lead at Chorus Entertainment. Chorus is a leading media and entertainment company. You might have recognized us through some of our brands such as HGTV. We're the ones that broadcast Nickelodeon, Disney, and Cartoon Network in Canada. And you probably recognize it through some of the shows aired in Canada, such as Saturday Night Live or even Big Brother Canada and New Amsterdam. So in my role and in my world, with diversity and inclusion, I bring that plan to life working with the senior leaders on our people and comms team. And we have a D&I council that also helps us. And across our global news stations offices, they may have a local D&I committee as well, because as a federally regulated media industry, we're required to have representation in front of and behind the camera. As you can imagine, lots of disruption in the media and entertainment world because of physical distancing requirements through public health orders and emergency orders across provinces and across various cities. So we can get more into that, and I'll tell you how we've responded to COVID-19 as well as a company and as an industry, and what is in store for us.
Awesome. Winston, next.
Great. So good evening or good day, everyone in general. My name is Winston. I'm working at Autodesk as a product manager for advanced analytics, as I was introduced. By the way, we're also hiring. So add us on LinkedIn, add myself on LinkedIn. We're hiring a number of data analysts. So a little bit about my background. So I have an MBA at McGill. So just finished actually. So I do share some of your disappointment for not having an in-person graduation ceremony. I have worked in two industries. I work in a traditional aerospace industry. That's actually where Peter and I met. And I also worked in tech, so I'm also a good resource for you in terms of telling you how, the winners and losers in this post-COVID world, and how and why tech is actually thriving.
All right. So let's get started, guys. So I kind of brought up a few things, and I wanted to say, so we have a few questions. Actually, let's just use the questions that we just got from the panel already. So the first one that we just got was, if I was an arts or social science major, what kind of jobs would you guys think outside the box for me? Well, it's not really me, but you know what I mean. If I was a student looking in arts and social sciences, what were kind of opportunities that we can look into? Steph, would you like, or Winston go first?
Sure, I can go first. I think in the post-COVID world, especially, but I mean, we've been seeing this trend for a while now, but it really accelerated in the post-COVID world, right? Like Peter kind of alluded to, trust and transparency and empathy, all that stuff is more important than ever. What that means is that people and companies and organizations are trying to engage both their employees internally as well as their customers to make them feel more authentic, make people feel safe, make their product trusted from a quality standpoint and reliability standpoint. So as an arts major or humanities major, you are really you can leverage that side of your sort of brain and the way you think in terms of engaging with customers and engage with stakeholders, engage with employees, depending on your role, right? So that's I think that's something that you can advertise, that is a skill and the perspective and the mindset that's in need right now.
All right, Steph, you wanna tackle this quickly?
Yeah, I will. So I'm a poli-sci kid. I graduated from McGill in 2015, and now I'm in HR. So I fell into it by accident. I agree with most of what Winston said. If you want to target specific job titles or departments inside of a company, we said a lot that, the finance services and a lot of other services, there's a lot of customer service opportunity right now, whether that be in call center, whether that be through content or communications somehow with clientele. So that's definitely something that you should look at, that you have the transferable skills for. If you've ever worked in retail or customer service live, it's a bonus because we already know that you can deal with a disgruntled client in front of you. So dealing with one via text or video conferencing should be much easier for you than someone else. So I would definitely look at those kinds of opportunities. And honestly, like, anything that's a coordination type of position. So the title can get a little bit of slack, but a coordinator in an HR department. So the person, running some of the analytics, running some of the projects, helping out with different admin tasks, it can be a way in. And post-COVID, like the people who really rose up and had a diverse skill set are going to be getting more opportunities. So you have to think about getting your foot in the door in a department or an industry that is of interest. It doesn't have to be spot on, but go in and deliver and use that, leverage that for your experiences moving forward within the same organization or within another. So those would be kind of the areas I would target the most if I was coming out of McGill this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph. One, I'm going to ask Dave. So we have a question right now is, I recently graduated from McGill and I'm searching for my first job. How can I break the ice when reaching out to alumni? Because this student's actually thinking that, she doesn't want to be, he or she doesn't want to be overbearing. How can they reach out to alumni without kind of rocking the boat? Would you have any advice for this student?
Sure thing. Networking is one of my favorite things to do.
That's why I got you.
I always say, thank you. I've participated back up a bit. So every year, the Faculty of Management comes to Toronto. They do a Meet McGill kind of endeavor. And part of that experience is that the students, both undergraduate and graduate students, meet with alumni or even representatives who work in HR from different companies to just do a resume review or some form of interview practice. And one of the biggest things missing from people every time you talk to them is an elevator pitch. People still have no idea of how to introduce themselves and to describe who they are and what it is that they do and what value they can bring. But I'll even just go back to the more salient question of who are you and what is the story that you can tell? What can you convey literally in 30 seconds? If you ran into an elevator and you saw someone that you've been waiting to meet your entire life and you now have this moment, how are you taking advantage of it? The other thing I realize is that people are quick to hit the connect button on LinkedIn, and I've started to reject that. So when people send me send a request to connect on LinkedIn, unless there is a message, I instantly delete it. And that has to do with if I've never met you. If you include a message, it doesn't guarantee that I'm going to let you into my network anyways. I need to know and understand what this is all about, because very often you can get pitches from salespersons and so forth, or because, for example, I sit on an advisory board for a venture capital firm. Sometimes these are individuals just looking to pitch their companies or just get their business ideas in front of the business partners. So I'm careful in, all right, who gets into the network. One of the things you can do on LinkedIn, though, is hit the follow button. So if this is someone that you're really interested in speaking with, click the follow button just in case they don't accept your request to connect. And, just bear in mind that if you're clicking on the profile, looking at the profile for someone who works in recruitment, they're being bombarded with requests from everyone because they know everyone wants a job and everyone's trying to get in, and everyone is trying to schedule a one-to-one chat, a coffee chat, or anything of the sort. And just be mindful and be a little bit empathetic to them as well, that they simply may not have the time. A recruiter's day is actually very demanding because they're probably managing the recruitment cycle from end to end, and they're deep in it full. The last bit I'll tell you is you should attend events. Right now, we can't attend events in person, but you have the opportunity to participate virtually. And I'll never forget this article that I read on Business Insider, and the salient tip it had was always show up. So a lot of people register for this event. We've been told, 980 persons registered for this event. There are right now 494 of you on it. We hit 506 max. Now, here's how you'll get to do the follow-up by those of you who've attended. You'll be able to say what Stephanie, Peter, Abdal, Winston, or I said, and be able to cite that to us so we know, all right, you were in the session, and here's something specific that you want to follow up on. If you're just coming out cold, it makes it a little bit harder. When you have a warm handoff, a warmer connection, it really gives the person more incentive to say, okay, yes, let me make some time for this person. So really rethink your approach. Think about how you are approaching these individuals, and also think about why. Last but not least, and I said that was the last point, is think near peer. So very often we're chasing people with flashy titles because someone may have CEO or president, and little do you know, sometimes that CEO slash president may be the only person at their organization because they're the founder and they're just running the small boutique opportunity. So be careful to not chase titles. Look at if the person is doing the work that you're interested in and if they can provide substantive information that informs where you want to go. So be careful of the flashy titles.
All right. So Steph, yeah, I was gonna go Steph. I got you. Steph, can you
Yeah,
go a little bit more tactically about how to meet alumni or speak to alumni? Can you go a little bit more tactical?
Yeah, so I'm gonna plug it. I'm actually, I just finished an article, so I'll publish it tomorrow. It's really my own personal networking journey, and it actually talks about how did I get headhunted during COVID. You heard me, I got headhunted, I got approached. So it really explains in details the different steps. It's too long to go into here. So it's more just like the path I took, but advice for reaching out to recruiters, number one, you know, as Dave said, we're bombarded right now. So if you haven't taken the time to look at what opportunities we have posted and really figuring out the job titles or at least the department and level that you're interested in, we don't necessarily, if we're in a hiring industry right now, we don't have time to, you know, do a coffee chat with you. So what I would suggest, if you're looking more for the coffee chat and you want to bounce stuff off, try approaching very delicately, very nicely. There's a lot of recruiters who've posted that, you know, they're laid off in their industry right now, but they're open to talking to people and they're providing free advice online. Those are the people you should reach out to for the exploratory. Is my resume okay? Like, what are some good questions I can ask? If you're targeting a recruiter that's actually specifically working, you try not to make it hyper transactional either. So try to say like, hi, kind of introduce what you're interested in, ask me a question. I judge people on if they ask me a good question or not. Dave's elevator pitch is great if you're meeting someone in person. If you're thinking about that you're communicating through text, an elevator pitch is really annoying if I have to scroll down my phone to see all of the content of what you're trying to send me. So shorter answers, try to have 1 or 2 interaction points. Yes, no questions, I'll answer. If it's easy for me to say yes or no, so the way you formulate your questions too has to be thought out. You need to have a strategy. Who are you going after? If you're approaching recruiters, like I specifically list what positions I'm working on or what industries I'm specialized in. So don't approach the recruiter hiring for IT if you're looking for a customer service job. It's probably not the same person. Most companies who have internal recruitment teams have like, my team, we're like 30 right now because we had to upskill, like grow the team to handle the hiring spree. So you try to be aware of who you're talking to and maybe just saying, hey, I'm not sure if you're the right person for this, but if ever you're not, like, who's the better person in your team to talk to? That can be a great way for recruiters and for managers. Going off what Dave said, like if you want to approach management level, think of who, like what would be the level of the person who would hire for your level of position, right? If you're an entry-level person, it's not a director who's going to hire you. It is not a VP who's going to hire you. And yeah, it might be cool to approach them, but they're just going to take your resume, flip it to an HR department that's overburdened, not give any explanation. And it's not because they're rude, it's just because they don't have time, they have bigger fish to fry. So look for that first level manager when you are approaching them. So that was a little long-winded, but those are my quick set of advice.
So this, thanks for the question, Steph. So we keep getting the same question kind of over again, but with different, you know, specializations at university. So let's just go over everyone right quickly. If I was a graduate who studied something that is not really in demand right now, how would I get a job? Because we have wildlife biology, we have all different kinds. So, you know, I think that's the main question that everyone's asking right now. I think if you have a skill set that you were trained for the last 3-4 years on, and now you're coming to a market that skill's not in demand, what would you do to pivot? And Winston, I think,
Sure.
no, it's up to you.
Yeah, so great question, and I think this is a new question either, right? Graduates has been asking this question to themselves with every year that's graduating, right? And most of the time, and this is statistically speaking, right? Because we look at data, most of the time people don't find a job in their field, regardless of which market you graduate out of. And the current situation is no different, except it's more black and white for you. You are literally not going to find a job in certain fields because they are on the wrong side of that line that Peter just said before. So what this means is that you first of all you have to come to the realization that you have to adapt, and being adaptive is not only a good life skill, it's also a good professional skill, right? Like at work as well. So what that means is that you have to think, wait, for the last 4 or 5 years at school, what did you actually learn? The soft skills, transferable skills, the stuff, the networks that you have built, and all that stuff. What can you apply to in the area that is actually in demand right now? And you want to sort of shift your mindset a little bit, say how do you add value in this new society where you have a new different set of needs in terms of new companies are hiring new different roles and all, so it's all of that, right? So really this is I think it's painful right now, don't get me wrong. It's definitely we all went through that stage when we realized when we graduated and then that you don't have a job that exactly you want that's waiting for you. But most of us, I think probably all of us on this panel have went through that personal transition ourselves in our own time. Except take this as an opportunity to say, hey, you get that sort of shock in the pants, if you will, early. And then that's going to do much better for you in the long run than waking up at 35 and realize, oh wait, I was working at the job that really wasn't suited, or where is going down the wrong path, in terms of the world of opportunities, right? So this is I think you have to look at it that way.
Cool. So just to answer some questions, I want to move on. So I'm just going to give a quick understanding. So everyone who's watching, I worked in marketing, I worked in engineering, I've worked in artificial intelligence, and now I'm working in teaching, and my degree is finance.
Everywhere except finance, Peter.
That's all I want to say. And everywhere I've went, I kind of brought in the financial aspect. Like at Pratt, I said, you guys don't like finance, so let me do all the finance work. And they're like, awesome. In artificial intelligence, I brought in the understanding of the business aspect and how to increase value for our solutions. That's awesome, but it came from my finance background. And now in teaching, I'm doing this more of understanding the business and teaching requirements, which is a little bit different than academia. And again, that comes from me understanding the business. So it's always transferable and always has what you kind of learned, but it's something that we want to talk about. Going on further is...
Sorry, if I just want to add, and sorry to cut you off, and I think one thing you want to realize is that, inspired by Peter actually, is that you want to look at life in general as a continuous learning process. So think of it this way: you spent 4 years learning one thing, now it's time to learn something else, and then take the transferable learning skills with you, and then go do that. And after 2-3 years in that job, you might get bored, and you might want to shift into something else. And learn another skill. And then this is also, again, tying back to what was said before, is to diversify your skill set and then your abilities as well. So that will make you more valuable as an employee and for a company. Yeah.
All right. So one of the last ones, I know that us three spoke about it, Dave, but I'm going to give you a chance because I know everyone else's answer. Is during this time we talked about Coursera. There's a question talking about, hey, you're talking about learning new skills online from Coursera EDX. Are these things valuable, and getting a certificate from these websites? And if so, should I even put them on my CV? So I think we all have a say on that. But Dave, would you like to take the batter up on this?
Sure. I mean, during this time, people want to be doing everything they can to prevent what we call learning loss and skills depletion. Right. So signing up for various courses such as these, whether you're using Coursera or edX, of which McGill is a part, as long as you're finding meaningful activities to convey to anyone looking at your profile that you are actively engaged in your learning, in your professional and personal development, those are good signals to send. Some of them, such as edX, they do have a fee if you want to have what they call a verified certificate. So you may go that route. But even if you don't go the verified certificate route, it doesn't mean you can't list that learning on your LinkedIn profile or on your CV. So I would say to you, use this as an opportunity to, one, do a skill set inventory. Look at the skills that you already have And don't forget, your education is just actually one skill in your entire toolbox of skill sets. Education is just one part of that. You need to look at the volunteering opportunities that you've sought, the skills that you would have acquired from that, whether those are hard skills or soft skills. Look at the work experiences that you've had, the research opportunities you've had. All of those things are good things to look back at, do some serious reflection, and think about how you're aligned going forward. So yes, take advantage of every opportunity to level up yourself. It's absolutely critical.
All right, so Steph, I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to throw in another question we have because it's very similar, but I think you can answer it as well. So it's learning new skills is great, but looking at the job descriptions, there seems to be a lot of years of experience I need for the skill sets.
Yeah. So
can you help them about online learning and the experience level needed?
Yeah. So essentially, a lot of positions get posted with a certain amount of years of experience. I would say before COVID, a lot of that was just for show. I've hired people for positions that are asking 10 years seniority, and I hired somebody with like how many years of experience, Peter? A year and a half coming out of school that Peter referred to me. So your network is huge. Peter and I do this a lot. So whether I was at Cirque, whether I'm at Good Food, whether I'm in another company, if he calls me and says, hey, I have an awesome data analyst and I saw you have an opening, I'm going to reach out to that person because I trust Peter's judgment and I've hired a lot using him. So you need to have key people like that in your network, but not just in your industry, because they know other people from other industries. They know people with different job functions. Like we were talking about networking. Don't just network in finance. If you're a finance kid, network with the operations, show them that you understand what ops need. And that's kind of what I did, right? So when I was at Pratt, which is where I met Peter and Winston, I trained in the opposite direction. So I had the recruitment side, they trained me on the analytics side, and now I'm the one who's doing the adoption strategy for our applicant tracking system. I'm the one vetting AI tools for recruitment and deciding whether or not my company is purchasing them. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. So I would say like your network can definitely also help on that front. And can you repeat the question? Because I had a second point, but I forgot the full question. I'm sorry.
So we have a lot of skills, but in the job description, there's too many and they need years experience.
So anybody, if you have at least 50% of what we're asking for, you should apply, and you're really not going to be the worst applicant. And as a woman, I'm going to tell women, guys, we tend not to apply to anything unless we have 80 to 100% of the skills. I like to think I'm high-powered and motivated. I do the same thing. I'm just coming out of that shell this year, and I'm reaching. You have to reach for stretch assignments. You have to raise your hand. And girls, stop offering to take notes during meetings. Dudes never do it. They never send the recap. So you just spent an hour resuming a meeting, and all of your male colleagues are already on to new and better things and deciding what the strategy plan is while you sit and type at your desk. So make sure that it's weighted. It's a basic thing, but I'm just saying. So definitely apply. And it's more, the questions you ask are going to demonstrate the knowledge you possess. So you have to vet, are you talking to a recruiter? Does that recruiter actually understand what that position is? Because sometimes they don't. So if they don't, overwhelming them with really complicated questions is actually going to turn them off. So gauge accordingly. If you feel like the recruiter really didn't understand what you were doing, try to figure out who the hiring manager is and reach out directly to them on a technical level. And if you do have an interview with a hiring manager, you have to think more about the system, right? Of how the company is set up, the bird's eye view, so that you can understand where there's actually an issue and maybe you have a skill set to solve that issue. So when you're answering interview questions, when you're approaching people, if somebody does reach out to you, really list like, hey, I worked on this project, I was able in money. Did you reduce a cost? Did you reduce time? Did you improve top line growth somehow? Think about the projects that you do. What's the value you're delivering? Because listing just your tasks that you did at a customer service job, I'm gonna be like, cool, it was a customer service job. But maybe you were the assistant store manager in a retail shop that was the least performing in its area, and through your coaching of your associates, because that's what you like to do, you were able to hit target number 2. So that one sentence just made me go, oh wait, this person has management potential, right? Even if it's in a student job. So you have to think about how you're putting those skills forward, and that will work. Like a manager who knows what they're doing, a recruiter who kind of knows what they're doing. We're looking for the keywords, but we're looking at where is the value. Can you create value? Can you answer a problem? Like if you're an engineer that can do graphic design, it's weird, but like if you can bring that up in a conversation somehow, that's super cool, right? So
Dave, I know you said you wanted to just add something quick. What's up?
Yeah, Stephanie mentioned it. When it comes to looking at job descriptions, job postings, really, women, if they don't meet at least 60% of the requirements, they tend to not apply. And for men, even if they only meet a percentage, let's say around that same 60%, they think they're pretty much qualified for the opportunity. So those are the things I advise organizations on, even my own, in terms of how much care and attention needs to be put into the job description. Even the choice of words may cause people to not apply. So for example, there are certain words that we consider to, convey a gender description of things, or maybe leaning towards one gender, and those things will cause women not to apply. So it's always important that people apply. And as one recruiter rightly said, it is their job to determine who gets moved on to the next level, who gets screened out or not. So don't add that pressure to yourself of screening yourself out. Leave that burden on the recruiter. Your job is to put yourself forward as best as you can. And the reality is you have no idea of what the real internal business needs are. So the job description only captures so much. The hiring manager may very well be looking for something else that wasn't so well conveyed in the job posting. So don't ever just screen yourself out.
All right. So one second. No. Wait. Oh, okay.
I just want to follow up on Dave's last comment really quickly.
Go quick.
The amount of times we publish a job description, but the manager in the back end, when they're telling us what we need, they're like, you know what the unicorn actually looks like though? It's like an engineer who knows how to do analytics and finance. So you might not get top performance in everything, but when we see that resume come through with that wish list or that one quirky thing the manager said, we're paying attention. So we will pick up on that. So just keep that in mind. There's a whole, Dave's 100% right. There's a whole other backstory behind the job description.
So Winston, I'm gonna have to cut you off because it is 7. We're gonna continue, guys. But Abdel, I know we want to close just for now, but we're gonna continue a bit. But just for you to close a bit.
Yeah, wow. It feels like with those questions, and we've been seeing the influx of everything that's coming in, that we're just getting started.
Yeah.
So we'll spend a little bit more time on answering a few more questions. Thank you all for your patience. For those of you who haven't had your questions answered yet. In terms of just a few points we do want to wrap up with, for those of you that have to leave at 7 p.m. So just a summary of Peter's presentation. Peter mentioned that there's a lot of different types of employment available now. There's full-time, part-time contract, and people don't think about those levels. So definitely do your research and see if something that can be more applicable to you is available. There are still many industries that are hiring. In Montreal, you mentioned video games. In Toronto, telecommunications, financial services. Steph, Winston, Dave, a lot of people have made pitches for their own companies. So there are people still hiring. Remain optimistic and go out and look for them. For those of you who've had your internships that have been either canceled, postponed, etc., look at the government options that Peter also touched on. And, business, experience, talent, it's all been disrupted. And we're trying to figure this out together. I want to summarize from the panelists themselves. And again, it's been a really short amount of time. Winston, you mentioned the importance of soft skills, of adaptability, and that being more important today than ever, and also lifelong learning. So please take note of that. Steph, I could literally quote every single thing you said, but to summarize quickly, be focused in your outreach to recruiters. Be very intentional about the questions you actually ask them, because it's going to showcase the type of value that you're going to bring. And also, in response to that first part, make sure that you highlight what is the value you're going to add to the role, to the company, to your manager. And finally, for Dave, again, so many points. The elevator pitch that you have that nailed down. What's the value that you can bring to your respective role? There is still a lot of importance in networking. You're seeing it with the individuals you're speaking with today. So make sure to reach out as well and do that skill set inventory. Now is the best time to upskill, and use the available resources to you. The one thing I would add on my end, and thank you panelists, you've done such a phenomenal job, is, as I mentioned before, we really are in this together. Millions of Canadians have been impacted in just the last few weeks alone. So don't be shy to reach out. These panelists have dedicated their time over here. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Many of you have asked questions that are specific to panelists that we do not have time to get to. So please add them, connect with them, and if available, they're more than happy to share. I know I am, so please don't hesitate to reach out. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, Peter, Dave, Stephanie, Winston. You all have been absolutely phenomenal. I also want to take a minute to thank the McGill Alumni Association. I want to thank Kay specifically. He's done an amazing job. To all the people that have been supporting us today as well on the call. Irene, who's been handling a lot of the questions. Thank you, Irene. Thank you for the additional support as well. This is the first in a series of webinars. There is going to be more. So after the webinar, you're going to get a feedback form. Fill out that form. Tell us what you want to see. Right now, what we have on the itinerary is on May 26th. We're looking to dive a bit deeper into LinkedIn for digital recruitment. And on May the 27th, we're actually hosting an event alongside Next Canada that's going to focus on COVID's impact on the startup ecosystem in Canada. So for those of you who are interested in working in startups, launching your own startups, funding opportunities, etc., that's going to come on the roster as well. So please follow the McGill Young Alumni Association or respective social media networks and mark your calendars to keep an eye out for those. So thank you all again. I'm going to pass it back to Peter to address.
All right, so we have one big question because I love it. But before we do, I just also, for everyone who's maybe falling off, if you guys, we also want to offer our help. If you guys are nervous about your CVs, please send it to my email. I will attach it. Send your CVs. We will get back to it. If we have a huge influx, I'll find other friends of mine, such as Steph and Winston and others, to help us on. We're together. Like Abdel said, we are a team, and we are here to help you out. So we'll make sure we add that. One thing I want to do, I'll answer it quickly. For someone was asking about volunteering during this time. Volunteering is a great opportunity. It's also a great way to do networking. I don't want to go too much into it, but I will send websites about how you can register, because finding volunteering opportunities is kind of under the radar or underground. So I will send you websites of where that you can do. But the big question I want to get, hello, hi Steph.
For the volunteering guys, those of you that are planning to do that, try to lead a team of other volunteers, try to do project management for them, try to, do some sort of management. They're looking for people who have that skill set. That's something that you'll be able to use later in your interviews and in your, so be focused about how you're volunteering too.
So Winston, I know you're going to say something, but I have a better question I have to answer before we get 15, because this is actually really paramount. Is it seen, and this is, I think we're all going to want to chime on this, that's why I want all 10 minutes. Is it seen poorly for university graduates to work in service jobs such as retail or grocery, even though they're largely available? How can this experience at those places be positioned for post-COVID careers? I think that's an amazing question. And Winston, you're up to bat.
Great, finally. Okay, so I think I think first of all, there's no bad experiences or poor job experiences. It's just how you tell your story. Nobody's gonna forget this things that happen anytime soon. Chances are it will change the world in a way that we can't even imagine right now, and it's gonna be a defining moment in many people's lives, right? So when you say, hey, I took an unusual job in 2020. And here's what I learned, like a couple of years down the road. How you tell your story is really the key. It's like there's no bad experience or bad background. It's really how you take that and build it into what is you, right? And what becomes of you afterwards, your professional experience and so on, right? I think Steph mentioned about one particular thing is that if you work in a grocery store, you can demonstrate leadership or management potential. By streamlining supply chain processes, where how the worker lays out, go through the day-to-day, all that stuff, right? If you can demonstrate that, and then be able to sell that as experience, I think that's very much more valuable than you sitting on your butt for 3 months or 6 months and saying, oh, I don't want to have that bad experience on my resume because I don't want people to see that I work in a grocery store. I think when you tell your story, say, I chose to go out and help and got a job and contributing to society when we're at a place where it's needed, and grocery store is a place where essential workers are needed, is much better than say I watch Netflix.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Maybe I think I'll pass it to Dave.
Yeah, let's pass it to Dave. What's up, Dave?
Hi everyone. I have been in those very same service positions, if you will. When I graduated, it was the hardest thing to actually find a job. One, because it was in human resources, and I, as someone who's originally from Jamaica, French is nowhere near close to being my mother tongue. And so finding a job in Montreal was difficult, and then trying to find an opportunity in Toronto from Montreal was incredibly difficult. Gladly, because of my connections on campus, I was able to get some jobs, and some of those jobs were working at Service Point, that you should all be familiar with, and the other was working for what we called, and I don't know if this is still the name now, McGill Food and Dining Services. So I was up at BMH, Bishop Mountain Hall, and in Royal Victoria College, is that the RVC? Yes, serving food to students, restocking the shelves, so that was, you always have what you need to eat when you come in. And as Winston said, it's all about the narrative that you put behind it. So if you simply just see yourself as doing that, then you're already limiting yourself. Really to think about, how did this develop your customer service orientation? How did you handle conflict? How did you provide and deliver information to the thousands of students passing through, needing dietary restriction information and the menu, the items in the menu and so forth. So you're providing a lot of information in that sense. So if it's hard for you to describe that experience, then reach out to someone who might just be able to give you some language for your CV.
Yep.
The other bit has to do with, don't just limit yourself in that opportunity. You can use it to do so much more. Sometimes you actually need to ask for the opportunity to take on an extra task. If you find that you are able to do this, do that. I'll tell you what, at the airport in, at the airport in either one of our airports in Ontario, where they're seeing significantly reduced air traffic, some persons have had to be laid off. What they've done is also redeploy staff. So people might have been in white collar opportunities are actually now painting the walls of the airport, fixing lights, doing other fixtures and other maintenance work around the airport to keep operations going and still earning their keep, if you will. So ask for the opportunities, ask about ways in which you can contribute more if that's where your skill sets lie, because those opportunities are there to grow. Dave Mackay, who's now the CEO of RBC, he was actually a bank teller once. And big story from Jamaica at Scotiabank Jamaica. The gentleman who was the then CEO, you would not believe that this guy was the janitor for Scotiabank. He worked his way up from being janitor to CEO of Scotiabank. Wes Hall, who's probably the only black man right now working on Bay Street. Wes Hall, grew up in extreme poverty in Jamaica, came to Canada, was still in extreme poverty. Wes Hall used to work for investment firms as their mailroom clerk, I believe. He now runs one of the most well-known and profitable advisory services firms, and you can't stop Wes Hall. Wes Hall is a known entity, so there are many stories of rags to riches. People really work their way up and worked hard. Ben Carson, who's now Secretary for HUD, Housing and Urban Development in the US. If you know his story, he was a very poor guy, grew up in very dirt poor circumstances. So it all depends on how you take advantage of an opportunity and decide to put in your narrative and craft that.
All right, Steph.
Cool. So I'll kind of dovetail that. I wrote down a couple points. One industry we didn't talk about, guys, but I'm thinking of it because this is what my family does. The agriculture industry needs people right now, and the government's actually giving you a bonus on top of the services that they've already announced if you can go work at one. So I know it's not ideal if you're in a city, but that's a huge market, and it'll kind of humble you. Like, you'll see the circle of life, you'll understand where your food comes from. You'll probably work with people who are going to be maybe blue collar their entire lives. It will give you an understanding if you ever have to manage blue collar workers. So going to a grocery store, having that humbling experience, learning how to get things done on the floor and make a decision on the spot is a really useful skill, no matter what your job is. I've worked in art supply stores, gas stations. I've worked in fields with Mexicans, like picking up, vegetables and stuff. I've done all of that. And when I got out of university, it took me a year and a half to fall into my now industry. So I was doing telesales, that sort of thing. So we have to hustle right now. We talk about the side hustle, the people who hustle, the people who, hey, if you're not working in your field, side hustle it somehow. Figure out if you can do some free consultation, help out a startup. If you're an art student, for example, maybe you could help them with graphic design and concepts to attract, the eye to their logo more if they're trying to hire for healthcare, for example. There's all kinds of stuff you can do as a side hustle, but you still have to eat. So you got to be realistic. None of us experienced 2008 as workers, right? So we've always been in an employee market where we can make vast demands and really have an employer cater to us. Now we need to be a little bit humble, and you're already starting ahead of most people, guys. Like a McGill degree on a resume, it's the only reason somebody picked up the phone for my first job. They were like, oh, we saw that you went to McGill, so we assume you speak English well, that you have a good analytical skill set, and that's how I got my foot in the door. So you're starting ahead of the curve of a lot of people who don't have that right now. No recruiter is going to look at your resume in 2 or 3 years and go, oh, in 2020, worked for a year like in a grocery store, what judgment? No, we're all going to remember. Like, we're all going to remember what was going on, and people who don't have anything on their resume, then we're probably going to go like, really, this person did nothing for 6 months, even if it's a volunteering experience, even if it's, consulting, but even if it's for free, even if it's to give you the opportunity to develop your own skill set with programming, with analytics, with that sort of thing. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do. So just don't go idle. Hunker down. I always tell people it takes a year or two to really get your career kicked off to like where you want it to go. You're just going to hit a speed bump out of the gate, but once the growth takes off post-COVID, you're going to have been there. Like, you're going to be in the ride, you're going to be ready to go. And if you're smart now and you've invested in your skill set and your network, you're going to be much better equipped than most people in 2 years when you can really make a significant jump in your career upward. So that's like my little spiel.
Yeah. So one of the last things I want, that Steph, that was amazing. David was amazing. Winston too. One last thing, guys, if you read anything about books and everything, pain actually makes things happen. Right? I know it's a little negative to look at, but if you're embarrassed, so like the question was, is it seen poorly? It doesn't matter, to be honest. Even if it is seen poorly, there's always going to be a bias, a stigma of something. However, if you look at it that you're helping, and even if it hurts you, you're gonna see opportunities because of pain. Because because that's what we are as humans. When we're uncomfortable and there's pain, beautiful things come in from our imaginations and minds. So this is an opportunity also to pivot that as well. So I just want to, go Steph. No, Mike, we have to finish off. We have to sign off.
It's very quick. It's one sentence, but I was talking to my COO of Good Food. So he's a McGill grad. He founded his company with his partners. And he said to me that he's almost upset a little bit at some of the support the government is giving out, because some people are just choosing to stay home. Yeah. So you can bet that he'll be judging people if he sees that they didn't work in 2020, and he won't care what you did. He just wants to see that you contributed to society somehow. And like working in a grocery store, people need to eat, and those people are exposed, they're on the front line. So it's a completely different reality than even me. I sit in my beautiful office at home that I'm so glad I decided to make, and I do recruitment. But like, if the grocery store is closed, and you need something last minute, who's going to do it? So there's a value in that, and there's an appreciation as well.
All right, so sign off, guys. I know it's over 7:15, guys. Honestly, so can we just do a quick round? You have 1 sentence each, no more rambling. I know as much as we loved helping out, but so starting with Steph, ladies first. Can we just do a quick sentence of what takeaway?
Okay.
Probably where to contact you. Where's going to be your article and a takeaway? Go.
Yeah, so article is going to be published on my LinkedIn tomorrow, so you can follow me. I think my info is up, so you'll have the in detail thing that I was talking about. Obviously, I'm recruiting a lot right now, so quick questions. My response time is going to be slower than Peter. I'm going to be straight up with you, but if it's recruitment specific, I will get back to you, and if we have to schedule something in a group format, we will. And my key takeaway is, guys, you got to hustle. It's going to end. It's going to go back to normal. So hang in there, and make your own destiny. It's cheesy, but like, make it happen, guys.
Yeah.
Sounds good. It's Winston.
Yeah, definitely. So you can definitely the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. I see a number of you already added me. I will accept all of you who added me, provided that you have a good explanation and you introduce yourself well. And I'll definitely try my best to answer all of your questions. But keep in mind that if all of you add me, I'm not going to get to you, but I'll go down that list. So add early. I think as a takeaway, I want to say two things, right? One is to echo what Peter said about looking at this from an outside of the box perspective, right? Like if you don't get the job you want, think outside of the box, do something else. And as I look back at my career, and Peter and Steph and Dave, I'm sure for you guys as well, is that when you graduated, your classmates who got the perfect job they wanted, and they're still there 5 years later, they didn't grow because they're so comfortable. The people who didn't get what they wanted, they're like, oh, those lucky people, they got what they wanted. Now you're much more ahead of them because you face pressure, you face pain, you have that moment of realization when your life isn't working, and then you have to jump out. So look at life that way, right? No pain, no gain, and now you have that pain. It's better to have that pain early. My second point I want to make, and Peter, I know that I'm short on time. The second point I want to make is that work experience. When they say 5 years of experience or 10 years of experience, just keep in mind that's pre-COVID experience. That doesn't mean much these days. Post-COVID experience, everybody's the same. It's a 2 month and a couple of days. So if you go to a company that's really truly hiring people who want to transform their company, you say, I have this many months and days of post-COVID experience, and I've been talking with my school and my classmates and my network to say, how do we digitally transform or engage the customer better, recruit better, build better brands, all that stuff. If you don't have a job and you don't want to work at a grocery store, think of that stuff, and that might become your elevator pitch, and maybe that might be your sort of side hustle project, and you can do, and then that you have a story to tell. So that's my pitch. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Go.
So on my end, I just want to say to you all, just a quick moment of pause. I think that is what COVID-19 has also afforded every one of us around the world. It's in some ways Mother Nature hitting the reset button or just hitting the pause button, because we've all been in the go, go, go. And once we finish what we think is one stage of life, that we jump into the next thing. And so, of course, the gradual flow would be that you complete your studies, you graduate, and then you must find a job. And now you have this opportunity to pause. And I want you to pause to, one, be mindful of your mental and emotional well-being, because those are critical as we're locked away, as we're distanced from people. As humans, we're social beings, so we need connections. I want you to be mindful of where you're at. To the advice and how I think you can take advantage of this pause. In every time I present, I realize I'm always giving homework, but it's good stuff, and it's hopefully helpful stuff for you.
That's good
Prepare
stuff.
Prepare the elevator pitch that I talked about. If you need help, feel free to reach out to me and I'll tell you how you can get to me. You also want to prepare a portfolio of the things that you've done. So those tangible things you'll be able to share. Do your skills inventory, as I recommended, the hard skills and the soft skills that speak to you as an individual. And last but not least is to follow the news. Very often people in our generation seem to be disaffected with politics and so forth. It's governments that are keeping the world afloat right now, because the private sector doesn't have the capacity to do it all. Neither can the not-for-profit sector, or any sector for that matter. Everything is coming out of government's funding to keep us afloat. And that is where some of the opportunities will lie as we deal with geopolitics, as we deal with supply chain management around the world with an interconnected society, and what that will all mean. Closing of transporter, commute, all those things are critical. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see the story of my volunteering and how that has actually got me the jobs that I've had. It hasn't been because of the previous jobs, but because of the volunteering opportunities and the volunteering that I continue to do. So if you need to reach me, you may use LinkedIn. You must have a reason as to why. You can certainly do the follow thing there. And for those of you who are students at McGill or recent graduates, my McGill email is still active. As alumni, we have it for life. So if you're smart enough, you'll figure out the email address. So I'll leave that to you as your challenge.
Guys, mine is not, so LinkedIn.
It's a treasure hunt. All right, so guys, little sign up for me. So we do have some questions. I'm going to be taking these questions. I'm going to write them down. So in our follow-up email, I will answer some of the questions. So, don't, if you did ask, I got you. It's written down. Number two, to reach out, I put my email and my LinkedIn. Don't hesitate. We're also making content to help you out every week. As well. That's one of the reasons Adele asked me to come. But these are all important for you to make sure. So don't hesitate. Reach out. I'll answer the questions, and also send us your CVs if you're a little bit wondering if you need help on that. Thank you so much for your time. I know you heard my voice for what, an hour and a half nearly. I'm so sorry, but have a great night, and thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. So everyone, thank you again. I just wanted a final shout out. Peter, Dave, Stephanie, Winston, thank you all again so much. We really appreciate you making the time. And everyone found a lot of value from the overall presentation. We didn't get to a lot of questions, but we'll try to after. Also wanted to give a thank you to Kay, Irene, and Victoria from the McGill Alumni Relations. You make this happen. So again, thank you all for that. Sign off for me, it's a lot of the panelists said is reach out. We're here to help. Yes, this is COVID. A lot of things have happened. A lot of jobs have been lost, but it's also a time of opportunity. It's a time of growth, personal, professional, or otherwise. So make the most of it. You can reach me on LinkedIn. And please keep an eye out for our upcoming events, as we mentioned, on May the 26th, May the 27th, and give us feedback on what we can improve and what you want to see. So thank you all, and have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care of yourselves, everyone.